Hello. This is a story about the fall of a symbol of freedom, and it's been pulled down, like many statues across the Western world, by a combination of entitled political agitators and invertebrate administrators. Now, in all the madness of London, my constant comfort has been the Isle of Man for good sense and practical behaviour. For those unacquainted with the island, it's in the Irish Sea, about equidistant between Cumbria and Northern Ireland. And although historically it's been ruled by various Norsemen, Vikings, Scots, what have you, dukes, earls, various lords of various sorts, it's never actually been ruled by any of the British royal families. The Isle of Man is now what's called a crown dependency, under the protection of the United Kingdom, but with its own government. It's always been a bit of anarchy in the Irish Sea, and it was for centuries a real headache for England because of all the smuggling it ran. In the 18th century, England took control, and the Queen is now known as the Lord of Man. And on Manx money, yes, it has its own money, she is shown without a crown. Now, my ex-colleagues in the BBC used to make a lot of fun of the Isle of Man, not specifically to me, although I do have family on the island, but the Isle of Man is a standing joke among the Islington intelligentsia, who make oh so witty quips about having to set your watch back 50 years when you get off the plane, that sort of thing. Meanwhile, the island has more or less full employment, a rational tax system, and a prison near the town of Derby, and so often referred to as the Derby Hilton, a prison which has a recidivist rate which is 1/3 of any prison in the rest of the United Kingdom. Mind you, I do have to point out that at least one of the prisoners that I know about was doing porridge because he'd hit his mother-in-law over the head with a copy of Hello magazine. So I suppose if he manages to avoid newsagents in the future, he might never go back to jail. Right, the Isle of Man is also host to the TT races, of which some of you will have heard. It's a showcase for just about the highest tech machines on the planet. So, despite my Guardianista colleagues and neighbours, I have, as I say, always looked to the Isle of Man for good sense and practical thinking. It was a beautiful dream. And last week, that dream was shattered when the Isle of Man really let me down. I honestly didn't know about it until one of my Manx subscribers told me of the Black Lives Matter protest through the streets of Douglas, the capital, and it's in Douglas where my story begins. A thread on the website Manx Forums discussed the upcoming demo, and several contributors made the comment about Black Lives Matter, and their slogan, Black Lives Matter as a slogan, and they were saying that all lives matter. One of the people who made this point as well was a chap called Stu Peters, a balding, running to seed radio presenter who had in his time, he'd had many jobs, including being a taxi driver. I'll put his photo up here, and you can just see the white privilege oozing out of him, can't you? Stu Peters expressed the opinion on this Manx forum that having a protest in Douglas for a disgraceful killing 3,000 miles away under a police system that has nothing to do with the United Kingdom, actually, I think that all the fatal shootings by British police are to do with terrorism, and all of them recently anyway, In 2018, the grand total of fatal shooting by police was 4. The only Afro-Caribbean man I can think of who was shot by the police in the course of an arrest was in 2011, and that guy did have a gun. So I'll say that Stu Peters had a point. Anyway, others made the same point, but Peters' misfortune was that he presents a radio phone-in show. Sure enough, a couple of weeks ago, some guy called Jordan Maguire rang in and took Peters to task about his opinions. So I'm not going through the whole conversation, but you can find it on the BBC website, and I'll leave a link in the description. I'll just read out a couple of points. After making clear that he was just as repelled by the death of George Floyd as anyone else, Peters says, I don't understand why people on the Isle of Man are protesting in support of Black Lives Matter in America, which is 3,000 miles away. And then Maguire responds as follows. Okay, so what you're saying, all lives matter, that first of all is just derogatory and ridiculous. Let's just put this way. Derogatory, it isn't derogatory, and ridiculous is his opinion, but he's saying this as fact. Peters says, no, it's not derogatory. And then Maguire continues, for all lives, listen, for all lives to matter, we have to raise the people of all creed, colours, religions to the level that white people's privilege allows them to be. For all lives to matter, black and other. And then Peters interrupts with, I've had no more privilege in my life than you have, Jordan. And Jordan says, excuse me? Because obviously he must have had a very tough life. Peter says, I've had no more privilege in my life than you have. I'm a white man, you're a black man, you say. And then Maguire says, if you believe that, then you're already. This is exactly what white privilege is. I'm not saying that you haven't, endured anything in your life, but you have automatically. The system is built for you to win already. You can see this fellow is extremely articulate, can't you? I have to go through everything in my daily life. I think he means there that being black, he's got to carry his black skin through daily life with him, and it's terrible. You know what? As a woman, I have had prejudice and opinions voiced about me that have specifically to do with me being a woman. That's what I am. I'm not going to tell people that they have privilege just because I'm having difficulties. Everybody has privilege. As a matter of fact, going to statistics, more white people, white men commit suicide than black men in America. Far more. I think it's like double or triple the numbers. Now, that must mean that these men have serious burdens, serious problems. You don't kill yourself. I mean, the urge to live is very strong. You have to be really in trouble before you actually kill yourself. So, everybody has their burden. And this Maguire fellow seems to think that he has especially terrible burdens. Well, I don't believe that. And obviously, Peters doesn't either. But I'm not employed by a radio station. I'm just employed by you. And if you don't like me, as some people have said they don't, then you have the privilege of simply not tuning in again. All right, right. You have automatically, the system is built for you to win already. I have to go through everything in my daily life, and I have to go through these things that you don't see, so you don't think they exist. Or I kind of believe that you're an intellectual man to a degree. You're either extremely ignorant or extremely, I don't know what you are, but I'm not talking with you any longer. At which point Maguire slams down the phone. Now, I don't know what sort of impression you got of this Maguire fellow from that clip I read out, but the idea I got, and of course it's just a suspicion, is that he is actually not a very successful person. And my reason for this suspicion is that it's impossible to make a success of anything if you're burdened with a chip on both of your shoulders the size of the ones that Maguire seems to be hauling around. However, I don't know the man, so I can't be sure. As I say, it's just a suspicion I have based on life experience of meeting people who've decided that their entire life's work is bearing a grudge. And well, that's the end of it. Maguire slammed the phone down, and that would be that, except for one thing. Manx Radio sacked Peters. OK, they've suspended him. A petition has been set up to reinstate Peters by the free speech site run by Toby Young. And I'll leave a link to that as well. I do urge you to sign it. But that doesn't really solve the problem, does it? Even if they do reinstate him, because in future, he's going to watch his mouth, isn't he? And worse, every other presenter who needs the job is going to watch his or her mouth. As I say, I don't watch my mouth really in that way from my political opinions because I'm not employed by anybody, but these people are. So they're going to watch their mouth because they need to put food on the table. And worst of that, a whole lot of ordinary islanders in ordinary jobs are also going to be watching their mouths. This is how the poison spreads. This is how people stop talking to each other. This is how people don't dare to express opinions, because Peter's opinion was not an illegal one. It was a trenchant opinion on a particular situation, and he had every right to express that opinion legally, morally, anything. This is where the marketplace of ideas turns into the Wuhan market, breeding not ideas but the virus that kills ideas. And despite the fact that the Isle of Man has such a reputation for backwardness, it just so happens that it has become the first place in the British Isles where the first person has been sacked for voicing a perfectly legal opinion. Why don't you treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of promotional merchandising? The Grannyopteryx t-shirt or the Granbo mug, which comes in 2 flavours, with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. And whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.